Red 2 standing by, all for lit and in the green. Welcome back to Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. This project has gone a bit beyond just some simple relaxation. I'm now going in depth on all the racers. We will have some biographies done for them, an examination of their racer and how each part affects them, what their maximum stats will be, and things like that. Then we'll test them out in a series of hot laps on the Sunken City course. All of this will be explained as the episode went along. I just felt like I wanted to do a bit more with this particular project. All the information has been summarized from Wikipedia, for which I am very grateful. They have an amazing database on Star Wars, so go and check it out. It covers both new canon and legends. And for today, we are starting off with Anakin Skywalker and Teemto Pagalies. I'll be going through the roster basically from left to right, so we'll see all the different races and how they shape up. Let's get on with the show. Well, there's a lot to say about Anakin Skywalker. He's the plucky human pod racer pilot and Jedi Knight that we all know and, well, we all know. Okay, fan reaction aside and the fact that most people do prefer him as Darth Vader, Anakin's journey is central to the Star Wars saga. At the time of this game, despite being 9 years old, he is a very capable racer and pilot whose Force connection actually gives him the sharp reflexes needed to compete in the pod racing circuit. Generally, humans do not actually participate as pod racing pilots. While he has never actually finished a race according to the movies, he comes through at just the right time for everyone and proves his skill on the way to becoming a Jedi. Somehow he's made it to the planet Barunda and has become a track favourite at Grapevine Gateway, despite never leaving Tatooine prior to the movie. But don't think about that too much, okay? If you do need a refresher, watch the movies, read or watch assorted media, and just follow his story there, because if I covered everything, things might be a bit too long. But we already do know he's got a bit of a rebellious and reckless image, and there are plenty of clues in there that might wind up leading to what he will become. He's also the only racer who actually speaks Basic. Everyone else speaks Huttese, so just interesting little trivia there. Anakin Skywalker's pod racer is a custom-built model which uses two Radon Olza 620C racing engines. The cockpit measures 3.5 metres in length and the engines are about 7 metres long. This is a small and agile craft using a fuel system Anakin designed himself. The efficient fuel flow increased the power of the engines. According to the movie information anyway, the racer could actually hit a top speed of 947 kilometres an hour, making it the fastest pod racer around. It's worth noting, Sebulba actually purchased this pod racer after the Boonta Classic. And as we can see from Anakin's base stats, all of these are using the default parts. Anakin has fairly capable traction, pretty good cooling and repair systems, and decent air brakes. Turning is okay, but he unfortunately doesn't have great acceleration and top speed, somewhat in contrast to how things are displayed in the movie. But let's take a look at what going to Watto's junk shop will do for us. Oh wait, and we actually have to go into tournament mode if we want to do that, so bear with me a tick. Sorry about that, let's head on into the shop. So we'll skip back to the first of the items and basically go through everything as we basically select our parts. So we can see that our default part is the the R20 repulsor grip is our base part. We have the 60, R80, R100, R300, and R600. So Anakin's actually going to wind up with fairly good traction, probably about 75%. When it comes to turning, there'll be a small boost from the shift plate. Our control linkage is our base part. Anakin is also the only person who will actually speak Basic. The other racers all speak Huttese. So there's our Vectrojet, control coupling, control nozzle, and control stabilizer, so Anakin will have exceptional handling. The 44 PCX injector replaces our basic one, the dual 20 PCX injector. So I won't bother describing all the parts as we go along the way, because you know the basic ones. I'll just show off what everything does. So he'll gradually build up fairly well to when we get to the Mag 6 injector, but even then he's only got about 50% on the ranked acceleration. A plug 3 will boost his top speed, and Anakin will actually start jumping ahead pretty quickly, hitting maximum top speed and pushing beyond it with the Block 5 thrust coil. The plug 2 is our basic part. Anakin will eventually be able to get some pretty good braking. We have the basic Mark II air brake there. With the Quadrajet air brake, he will have maxed out braking, which is pretty handy if you need to stop on a dime. He will also have fairly capable cooling. We'll have our Stack 3 replacing the coolant radiator. Mark II air brake, as I said, is the basic one. I probably should have mentioned that. Ignore Watto in the background. We have the Stack 6, the rod coolant pump, the dual coolant pump, and the turbo coolant pump, giving him very, very good cooling, so he'll be able to boost pretty well. Then we'll move on to our repair. I did actually get things a little bit wrong. I think it's the Cluster 2 power plug that is actually the strongest. So there's our quad. There is just a standard single power cell. Our quad power cell, cluster power plug, the rotary power plug, and as we can see, the Cluster 2 does give Anakin very good repairing properties, so he will actually turn into a highly capable racer. It's now time for the hot lap trials. This is how I've set everything up. I am racing on Sunken City, the second Aqualaris track. It's a pretty easy track to race on, a few twists and turns along the way, but there's a pretty straightforward path, and you'll be able to put the pedal to the metal, basically, no real obstacles. Each racer will get 4 laps. The best time from those will be chosen and put up on the board to see who is the fastest, at least on this particular circuit anyway. So it all depends on which circuit you pick and the circumstances involved, really. I did initially want to do laps with and without boosts. Problem is, laps with boosts are a bit inconsistent unless I pick the same spot each time. So to save myself trouble, this is all on raw speed. So I'll be presenting these and showing off the lap board afterwards. Let's hand it over to our tame racing driver and get racing. Alright, so we've seen all 4 lap times of young Anakin Skywalker. So, which one is the best? How quickly did Anakin get around the track? As we can see, this is the default setup I have for the racer board. I will be showing the racer's name and their best time, and these will be automatically adjusted as we go along. It took a fair bit of editing to get this done. So, Anakin Skywalker starts us off with a time of 2 minutes, 2.761 seconds. Not too bad. Will it be an outstanding time? We shall have to wait and see. But that wraps everything up for Anakin Skywalker. And now, we can move on to the second racer for this episode, Teemto Pagalies. Teemto Pagalies is actually an exile from his homeworld, Moonus Mandel. He is considered handsome by the standards of the Vecnoid. You might not be able to see it, but it apparently is there, and that's the species to which he belongs. He actually had to leave his homeworld after rebuffing a marriage proposal from a Vecnoid princess. After drifting for some time, Pagalies found solace in pod racing, though some people speculated he was trying to get himself killed. After arriving on Tatooine, Pagalies developed an infatuation with one of Sebulba's Twi'lek masseuses, Anne Jella, but was unable to get her attention. During a concert held by Bolas Raw, who, believe it or not, is actually a highly popular singer, prior to the race, Pagalies discovered that Mars Guo was also hitting on Anne and offered to take her off planet if he won. Of course, she rejected him, but that's another story. Angered by this discovery, Teemto ratted him out to Sebulba, and that's why Sebulba takes out Mars Guo so ruthlessly during the race. Apparently around the same time, Jabba the Hutt had paid a hitman to eliminate Pagalies, but Qui-Gon Jinn sent the hitman on a wild goose chase. While he could be a notorious drunk, Pagalies was pretty sharp and confident, believing strongly in the technical superiority of his racer. Sadly, his confidence was undermined by a very precise shot from a Tusken Raider during the second lap of the Boonta Classic. Maybe the Empire should have hired those guys instead. Believe it or not, Pagalies survived the crash, despite the rapidly whirling cockpit, and recovered pretty quickly from his injuries, even though his ears melted off. Sadly for Rats Tyrell, the only person to actually die in the race, his everything melted off. Teemto Pagalies would become famous as a crowd pleaser later on, taking on daring stunts despite receiving several injuries along the way, including the loss of one eye. He eventually settled on Mon Gaza and would ultimately win the Aline Classic. Speaking of Rats Tyrell, that's actually his homeworld. Prior to the Boonta Classic in 32 BBY, Teemto Pagalies had bought a Rhodian slave mechanic named Pax Bonkick from Mars Guo, and with the prize money from the Aline Classic, he intended to buy Anne Jella at long last. Maybe I should pronounce that Gella. However, Sebulba also owned Pax's brother Trax Bonkick, and Teemto chose to reunite the brothers instead. He was actually still alive and kicking as late as 11 ABY, though minus an arm at some point. He worked at the old Mos Espa Grand Arena with Odie Mandrell after the arena's conversion into a swoop racing arena, and was able to give Leia Organa some information about Anakin's Boonta Classic victory, later sending her a recording of the race. So still a pretty helpful guy, even after all this time. Teemto Pagalies Pod Racer is an IPG X1131 long-tail model, capable of reaching a top speed of 775 km an hour. The gyroscopic ring surrounding the cockpit ensures stability during a race, as the design of the cockpit is otherwise a bit lacking in aerodynamics. The cockpit measures in at 5.33 metres long, while the engines are 10.67 metres long, just scraping in with the title of the longest engines on the circuit. Not particularly fast, but capable enough. As we can see, Teemto has pretty solid traction. Around about the same turning as Anakin. His acceleration is pretty good to start off with, but the top speed's not so hot. Pretty decent stats otherwise. Let's take a look at how he'll upgrade at Watto's shop. We need to go to buy parts.
Change your mind.
So, as we can see, the traction will build up fairly well. so he'll do pretty capably in that regard. Turning will jump up pretty well. Teemto will actually handle quite nicely. Acceleration starts out okay, but doesn't build up particularly well. It's still capable, but there are better out there. He'll get a pretty good boost out of his top speed, only just falling under it with the Block 5. Air braking will be pretty capable. Like Anakin, he'll max that out. And he'll develop fairly capable cooling. Not fantastic, but should be pretty solid overall. And as we can see, Teemto will get very, very good repairing capacities. And there we are, that's Teemto Pagalies hot laps completed. Needless to say, there won't be a lot of fanfare when it comes to putting his times up on the board because there's only one other racer against which he can compete right now. But with all that said, Teemto Pagalies did pretty well for himself, coming in with a time of 2:01.188 seconds, which puts him first out of 2. So far, so good. How well will he hold up in the long run? We'll have to see. But that should wrap things up for this episode. We will be continuing on with these projects, maybe 2 races for each episode. I might tweak things around a bit just to finish things off. Anyway, it has been a lot of fun getting this done, fiddling around and testing out some skills along the way. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you've been enjoying this. Until next time, this is Red 2 returning to base. May the Force be with you.